why is it not okay to treat another person cruelly? That's the basis for a conscience. And, so where is that? Is that a genetic basis? Is it a evolutionary basis that we evolved as social creatures that need to get along?
That's probably what a scientist would say.
Yeah, well, since I have a science background, that's what comes first to my mind is, that is our base back to when
love is a chemical reaction.
When we were, monkeys in a small tribe, and we had to work together, or is there are you attributing it to a spiritual, mystical?
I wouldn't apply those categories to it. I would say that a word that I often mispronounce when I try to say conscience. I say my conscience.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay.
Or is he conscience? Conscious.
Uh-huh.
I'm looking at, my gut reaction was that it's one and the same.
Mm-hmm.
Anne Frank said we are basically good at heart. We think we are basically God at heart. I dislike the word God.
That's what I meant when I said spiritual.
Yeah,
I meant that it's...
So I won't say God. I'll say the innate, the consciousness, the primordial consciousness that underlies everything is actually love. We define love as the experience of unconditional acceptance of what is. And to accept, you have to know. So love is an absolute state. Love is the unconditional experience of acceptance of what is, the experience of unconditional acceptance. So love is really the unconditional perception and unconditional acceptance of unconditional reality. It's the absolute truth. And it's conscious. That's the consciousness that underlies our objective mind, look both ways when you cross the street, and our subjective mind. All Jews are money grabbers. The blacks are inferior to whites, whatever nonsense. They're stored in the mind as though they're equally true. So the feeling of shame is really kind of maybe like a chafing, it's almost like the reason blood is red and we have nerves that hurt when we do something stupid like bang our elbow or we learn we're a child, we lean ever too far, we roll over in our Pampers and bump our heads. So that's a good teacher.
Right.
So the same way, the underlying consciousness that is who we really are is perfectly ethical, perfectly moral. It is pure love. It's and it underlies everything. It is the source of compassion. Compassion is like seeing these children they need help. They're in rags. They're not in very good health. They probably have ringworm and God knows what else. That would be the appropriate response. If you want to have a happy world, you want a world that really works for everybody, try that.
Right.
Instead of, ew, look, they have runny noses and they dress like in rags. Right. How many can relate to that choice, being the one you were imbued with and all the way through the public indoctrination system called schooling? The rich kids were just like in a different level, and maybe a big jock could reach those heights. But, so I'm saying, that's the source of morality, I think.
Right. Well, I'm thinking of...
And why it hurts when you do something unethical.
Right. Maybe looking at it from this point of view. One of the reasons that pet ownership is so widespread is because it's so difficult to find people that will just plain love us for who we are, that don't reject us in one way or another for things we do. And so we have animals in our lives because that animal never acts in ways that we would consider to be immoral. Like our cat, she might kill in order to eat, but that's not an immoral act. She's just doing what she has to do that's how cats...
that's their nature.
That's their nature to survive, is that they have to kill meat to eat. But she doesn't ever do anything that... she doesn't go next door and tell other cats secrets about me and laugh about me. Cats don't do that, and that's why we love them, because cats and dogs and parakeets, because we would, and you can't say they're moral because they don't have the option of being immoral, but that their natural behavior has that component. So humans in our evolving mind has evolved this capability to do things that are hurtful, that are painful and cruel to other people, because we've evolved this machinery of what we call the subjective mind that has all sorts of value judgments about good and bad.
Well, interestingly, concurrently, we've developed a code of ethics called the law.
Right.
That it really kind of interfaces around the world. And I don't know any place in the world that it's actually codified that it's okay to steal or murder.
Right.
So there's an attempt, and that's the objective mind,
right,
that is attempted to form and maintain a code of ethics, ethical behavior.
Yeah, so there's this universal sense that not only of what is right, but that human beings need to be held to that standard of what is right. So, and usually when you see something as universal in that sense, then it means there's something very basic in the human being that brings it about. It's not like it's just something that's come from the mind, because then it would be in one place but not in the other.
And what is good, Phaedrus, and what is not good? Do we really need anyone to tell us these things? Socrates.
So I don't know. It's an interesting question. I guess I would say that, yeah, it's the. That's what I think. It's the underlying consciousness of who we really are that's always there, and we've.
It's trying to give us the Jiminy Cricket treatment. It's trying to let us on, that, trying to clue us in. But as you said, once you get past the innocence of childhood, and I would say, like the great privilege to be around an animal like Question of Meaning cat, like our cat, whose name is Cat, is that she's just, compared to the two-legged critters that we interact with every day, she's impeccable. Mm-hmm. And it's the same way around a baby.
Right.
So you were in the presence of the divine. It's just like, and we all fall short. We condescend. And
so, and this isn't an argument for back to cat head.
No.
As a teacher once instructed Arthur, who thought that, well, if squirrels don't have, how did you put it? I can't remember.
If they're really...
they're really in the moment. Squirrels are really in the moment. Maybe squirrels
are
enlightened.
Are they there?
Right.
And he said, if I had something, I'd throw it at you. And he was a pacifist. But so it's not called back to squirrel head, Arthur.
Because we have to keep reminding ourselves and remembering. Because, I hear that. It's like, well, maybe dolphins are really the ones that are enlightened.
Yeah, right.
And it's human beings that are the most screwed up on the planet.
And it's good that you mentioned screwed up. Do you want to say some more about that?
Well, I think that, though, that the screwed up feeling of it is that we are evolving beyond what the capacity of other animals on this planet.
No counting.
And part of that
the last time
evolution,
you heard of a squirrel going to the moon.
Right, and part of the evolution of the mind takes us through the development of this subjective point of view, which brings about all sorts of values and competition and cruelty. But I think that's a phase that we have to go through in order to get beyond it to a truly enlightened mind, which will be, and then that enlightened mind is the place of true morality, because and then this is where religious people talk about, it's like without free will, and this is why they argue for free will, because without the choice to be bad, being good is meaningless. So for Question of Meaning cat, her morality doesn't really exist because she can't be immoral. But human beings, and I'm not arguing for free will here.
I hope not.
But what I'm talking
like
about, I'm talking about this movement through, this evolution through this phase that we're all stuck in, most of us now, is evolving through this development of the subjective mind and its cruelty and going past it. And so because we've transcended it, then we are really moral.
Yeah, it's the shedding of false beliefs.
Right.
And that doesn't come out of free will. It comes when you've You wake up one day and you're picking chicken out of a dumpster behind the Colonel, and you think, maybe I do have a drinking problem.
That's right.
Or whatever it takes. Whatever it takes to realize an incorrect course of action and make a course correction. You're not making it freely. It's because you've literally exhausted the limits of that belief that's controlling you. One of the most important questions ever asked, I was at a dinner party once, and I was talking about false beliefs, and this woman said, well, how do you know a belief is false? And I went, that's a good question. So I went away and thought about that for a few days, and the answer came to me. And I think it's a great, great answer. A belief is false to the exact extent to which it fails to admit to its limitations. We get into trouble when we think we know the answer completely. When we think we know anything completely, we are in trouble. Because when you think you know something completely, there's no way you can learn anything else. The cup is full, your mind is full. It can't be changed, and it's in complete control. But if we were able to, shoehorn in just a little honest humility, which is always warranted, because we don't know our shoes from our elbows, or from Shinola, our shoes from Shinola, then we would be able to maybe learn something. And I think that's what happened. I was newly imbued with the absolute knowledge that poor people you can treat with contempt and play a joke on them.
Right.
But when I did it, when I bounced a little stone off the little boy's head, I felt shame. And that was my innate sense of ethics, not guilt. I guess it wasn't guilt. It felt more like just an organic shame that I had done something wrong. Even though in the scheme of things, of course, I was guilty. I was 6 years old and was following the herd. Just turned 6. But it was unethical. It was the wrong thing to do. So there's a natural knowing. They used to use that. I've heard that term used before. A natural knowing, an innate sense of right and wrong. And of course, if we do wrong, we're not to blame for it because we are in no way imbued with free will. It's one of the cornerstones of our work. An insane person, and it's funny you should said screwed up, because what I think we're talking about here, this core, this essential consciousness, is sanity. Not only is it pure love, not only is it perfect ethics, not only is it entirely moral, not only is it the maximum way of dealing with the objective universe, perceiving it and accepting it as it is, including your own ignorance. It's all of that. If that doesn't define sanity, I'm howdy doody. It's sane.
Yeah.
So guess what? The rest of it. I mean, when I dropped the stone on the little boy, that was an act of insanity at the age of 6. I was already playing the game. I was under the sway of a subjective belief that had nothing to do with objective reality at all. A society that really cared doesn't let people eat out of dumpsters. All the socialism stuff, the booga, booga, booga. You have to sleep with a gun in your bedside table by saying, let the free market dictate. I love capitalism. You know what it is? It's like a big trench with everybody crowded down in it, and you give them all a knife and throw a loaf of bread in. That's your capitalist system, and it isn't working. In case you haven't noticed, the piggies at the top 10%, get half the income every year.
Well, yeah, I mean,
just look what's going on in your country. It isn't working, But somehow we've been sold on the subjective notion that democracy and capitalism are the same thing. You can't have one without the other. Yes, you can. It's called socialism for a start. And ultimately, if you really care about lighting up the whole world and eliminate poverty and babble different languages and people, warring with each other, Communism is the only thing that makes any sense. A perfect, pure communism. If you don't think Jesus Christ was a communist, you ain't reading your Bible right.
Yeah, read Acts. So because we can talk about more